ever wished you could be more charismatic? I'm Carissa Karner, your host, and today I am joined by Scott Mason, who shows you how to uncover your charisma. Now, Scott is the myth slayer. He's a speaker, a coach, an author, and he works with executives and successful entrepreneurs to develop clarity as to their vision, goals, and purpose, to reconnect with their inner truth values, and to level up their leadership and business skills so they can magnetize and monetize their professional freedom. Yes. Now, Scott's trailblazing signature program, it combines his wealth of professional and business experience with the fun, excitement, and deeper universal meanings of Greek mythology. How cool is that? And that helps clients dislodge the toxic myths to set their singular charisma on fire. Now, after graduating from Columbia Law School, wow, Scott worked for over 20 years as an attorney and a senior executive with a variety of organizations in the government and in nonprofit sectors. And he then successfully grew and scaled a manufacturing company. As you can tell, he has incredible insights on leadership and transformation. And he's been published in compilations and online magazines like Authority, Vents, Medium, and CEO Blog Nation. Wow. Wow, Scott, I'm just blown away by all you've done. And I'm so excited to talk to you. Thank you for coming on the show and welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. And thank you for that introduction. I don't even know who that person is, but you made him sound great.
That's because he is.
Oh, you bring it out in folks.
So tell us, how did you become the myth slayer? That's an incredible title.
Thank you. It really speaks to me, and it really speaks to what I'm about. As I went through my own transformational journey and became more deeply committed to being the person that those who were looking to up-level their own leadership or connect to their own purpose so they could, as you mentioned earlier, magnetize and monetize their own unique professional freedom, I had to dig in deep to figure out what was able to be a guiding light for me along my own journey, what gave that journey meaning for me and brought it unique power. And it was an unusual, I admit, source, but a powerful source, and that is the world of Greek mythology. Once I understood the power of these eons-old stories to change lives, I was able to translate that into a program that would help others change their lives. I'm committed to doing it, and hence, the Myth Slayer was born.
Amazing. What a journey. And I'm so curious, how did you go from being an attorney to realizing that you had the power to put these things together to help other people in the ways you do now? I mean, those don't seem to match up in my mind.
First of all, thank you for that. It actually is a compliment, because from the day I stepped foot into law school, it was an uneasy match. It was one that I learned to endure for decades. And that endurance had positives and negatives, the positives being resilience, the negatives being living a life for decades of increasingly unendurable misery and self-alienation. But when I think about what law school was, and I quickly discovered this both within law school and then in practice, it was largely related to two things which were opposite to who and what I am at my core and what I wanted to be. First of all, particularly in litigation, which is where I started out the practice of law, it was about basically ripping other people down, tearing witnesses apart, or taking to shreds the case that the other person was bringing against you. In other words, it was fundamentally negative. It wasn't building anything. But then the second thing is a broader view of that. Law, even in an advisory role, which is later what I ended up doing before I moved into outright executive leadership, was in one way or another always about cleaning up the messes of others or making sure that other people didn't make a mess. It was never about the creation and expansion of one's own vision. And so, again, the room for building, for having an affirmative impact in the world, the room to be able to shift people's dialogue around a topic in a way that was imaginative was extraordinarily limited. And those limitations manifested themselves with the personality types that you would see emerge if they had stayed in law their entire lives and that I observed all around me. Certainly, a personality type that I would have needed to become in order to really have a fulfilling law career for the entire professional life that I had in front of me would have been one that ripped me apart inside to such an extent. I don't know that I would have really been able to continue as a whole person. And as a matter of fact, for many, many years, I actually functionally did cease to exist as a human being, and walked around the world as an empty, soulless shell. And so the power and the drive to be able to move into a different space was something that has ultimately been a motivating force behind my own transformational journey, but it also pushes me hard to want to help other folks that may be similarly situated.
Oh, you've been there, so you understand what it feels like.
I've lived it.
Wow. How did you get out of that space?
A number of different situations arose, and they're painful. But I do believe in sharing them with people candidly. Not having an intrinsic desire to practice law, and in fact, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, kind of hating it, I was motivated to succeed in that space principally by optical concerns, things related to my appearance to the outer world, success, stature, title, salary, office size, the ability to wear nice suits, all of this shallow stuff that really doesn't matter. The problem was because it didn't matter really, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, my soul slowly began to die. And I'd look in the mirror sometimes and look right into the whites of my own eyes, see nothing behind them. Nothing. I would laugh if people said, "Oh, I feel something in my soul," or, "Oh, you have a good soul." I didn't have a soul, at least not that I could perceive. It had died. And I certainly didn't believe anyone else did. I thought those were nice little just things people told themselves to make them feel good. And so with soul death comes the emergence of something in its place. Nature abhors a vacuum. And that was a shell of a human being, almost like a walking zombie. And when you are a walking zombie, shuffling and ambling through this world, the world has a way of catching up with you. I eventually came to a point in my career in which my boss, who was the head of an agency, of a quite large government agency that I was second in command of, and I agreed that I no longer needed to be there. She really felt that I wasn't committed to her vision or committed to her. That really wasn't true. I actually really was committed to her. And I was committed to the taxpayers of the New York City, of the city of New York, who were ultimately funding the position that I was in. But my soul truly, again, wasn't there, wasn't committed to it. And I had to go in the process of exploring what a new life would be, because I left that job without another job lined up in the tail end of the Great Recession, when there was a very, very high unemployment rate for executives, and begin to really look inside and figure out who and what I was. what I would become. I had to crash. I had to live a time without prospects, without a job to supply me with security, without realistic opportunities for jobs coming my way in the manner that I'd been used to,
That
and
sounds
begin to
scary.
reinvent. It was
Yeah.
horrible.
I mean, that like not feeling like you don't have a soul, feeling like a hollow shell, that sounds scary in a different way, that you're almost numb to the scariness. And then to have this space where you don't know what's next,
Yeah.
that's terrifying.
Yeah. It's funny because I'd gone to see a career counselor who told me, "Oh, Scott, with your skills and experience, you'll have a job in 3 months." Didn't happen.
Oh my
Didn't
goodness.
happen. More than a year passed. And one night, about 3 a.m, I woke up sort of thinking about the lack of job opportunities in front of me and the pathetic shape of my bank account. And I couldn't hold my feelings back anymore. And I burst into tears. I'll never forget it. It was like this deep cry from the pit of my stomach. I just couldn't control. I just went on and on and on. And of course, my husband woke up and he comforted me and he listened to me for about an hour and a half. And then finally, we were so exhausted that we both just crashed back to sleep. Now, the next morning, when we woke up, he didn't have to work. Naturally, I didn't either. And so he said, "Scott, why don't we go for a bike ride?" And I said, "Okay, yeah, why not?" So we live in a walk-up apartment in New York City. We both put our bikes on our shoulders and we started to walk down the stairs of our apartment to the ground floor. And then we went out in the street with our bikes on our shoulders and we took the bicycles off of our shoulders. And I'll never forget what happened when I took the bike off of my shoulder and its tires hit the road. My husband turned to me in that exact second and he said, "Scott, take a look around." And I did. And the sky that day was so crystal blue. And the leaves on the trees on my street were this rich, rich green. And my bicycle that was yellow, it glittered like gold in the sun. "Take a look around," my husband said again, "because this moment of beauty will pass. It'll be gone. And you will work one day again. But you'll look back on this very second and wish you could have it again. But like the air, it'll have vanished." Those words not only helped me make it through that day, a day that I don't know that I could have made it through otherwise, but they began to get me to understand that the way I had been seeing the world was holding me back, was keeping me miserable, was keeping me stuck. It began to take me down that road that you just asked about, into becoming the victim who was suffering and miserable and soulless, into the myth slayer who's motivated and full of fire to this day and every day.
Wow. Yes. Yes. And how incredible that your husband played such an important role in that, that in that moment, he helped you to open your eyes.
Yes. In Greek myths, there is a god named Prometheus who brought fire down to humanity that was living in caves and darkness, defenseless and weak. And that fire opened the eyes to humanity and put our species in a place where we could begin to build. We could fire up bricks, build campfires, cook, do all of those things. It was all because of enlightenment, the gift of fire. And that's who my husband was for me in that moment. He was my Prometheus.
Ah, Oh, that's so powerful. And I loved how you just wove in some Greek mythology to help us see that moment. That's so cool. And this is what you do.
I've got a myth for everything. So don't ever worry about it. If you ever just are tired and just need a myth to talk about whatever you're feeling in that moment, just call me up. I'll tell you a story.
I'll just give Scott a ring. Scott, I need a myth.
Exactly.
1-800-Myth Slayer.
Ho.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. You got
Thank
something
you for
there.
that.
I know that as the Myth Slayer in the work you do now, you show people how to uncover their charisma. And that is so
Yes.
powerful. I've heard so many people say charisma can't be taught. You either got it or you don't.
Yeah.
And you're doing something very different than that. In fact, the
Exactly.
opposite of that. Can
Yes.
you speak to that and how you do that?
Thank you. Yes. First of all, I want to say, and I want to say it unequivocally, charisma can be taught. It can be taught. It can be taught. It's a skill. The only people that say that charisma cannot be taught, you either have it or you don't, are either those that have developed themselves and just want to have sort of a scarcity mentality and keep other people from being competition, or people who don't know what they're talking about. I spent years. If you don't have a soul, how on earth then can you project magnetism? I didn't have a soul, as I told you, or at least I had felt that my inner soul died. And so for years, I would stand up and I would give trainings or presentations or talk, and I spoke in the most bureaucratic, boring, legalese, monotone fashion that there conceivably could be. I did not have charisma. Yet, I somehow learned it. So I am living proof that it can be taught, it can be developed. And the Greek myths themselves, specifically through metaphor, address this as well. I will say charisma is something that can be easily confused with other characteristics, or it can be overly narrowly defined. For instance, it can be confused with the ability to be entertaining or the ability to be extroverted. Now, some would argue that either you are an extrovert or an introvert. If you are an introvert, you can't be taught to be an extrovert. And if you are conflating charisma with extroversion or gregariousness, then perhaps the argument that charisma can't be taught would have some validity. But that's confusing two separate things. Just like charisma is sometimes confused with being entertaining. Just because you can stand up on a stage and put your hand on your forehead and be dramatic and wail and stomp around doesn't mean that you necessarily are charismatic. It may mean that you're entertaining. It may mean that people are laughing at you or maybe with you. It doesn't mean that you're charismatic. Introverted, quiet people can be extraordinarily charismatic. In fact, by dialing it back, just as I'm doing right now, you can sometimes pull people in more powerfully than a zillion loud bellows could ever achieve. And the Greek myths specifically address that. So what I'm talking about with regards to charisma ain't just Scott Mason. It's backed up by stories that are eons old.
Ooh, I love this. And you know what I love is I am definitely an introvert. So that is good news,
Wow.
because if that were true that only extroverts could be charismatic, I'd be in big trouble.
And let's face it, you are extraordinarily charismatic, which is why this show is destined to do very well. I frankly would never have guessed that you are an introvert, but what that all points to is the power of being able to apply certain skill sets as well as practices into behavioral routines that we engage in our professions to pull out the inner charisma that all of us have. We each have charisma within us. It's merely a matter of us learning how to pull it out.
Yes, and I love that you say to uncover it, to pull it out, to uncover it.
Yes.
It's not that you are putting something in that's not already there.
Right.
You are uncovering and pulling out that something that exists inside everyone. And
Exactly.
to speak to that, you've talked a bit about what charisma is not. How would you define charisma?
I would define charisma more or less as the ability to use the power connection between the head and the heart. In other words, between message and feeling to magnetize opportunity. Now, the opportunity can be something that is business related, and that's how people usually interpret opportunity. But opportunity can be a larger goal. It doesn't necessarily have to be a ethical goal, by the way. It can be a negative goal, and history is littered with people who have uncovered their own charisma, but detached it from true ethical virtue or true ethical intent. And so I want to be very clear about the power of charisma. It's a power that can have almost epic force, but it can also have an epic level of destructiveness as well. So you connect the powerhouse of the brain with the heart to magnetize whatever ultimate opportunity it is that you want manifested into the world.
Mm. That's so important to notice that, or to speak about that, that charisma just is. It's not good or bad. It can be used for good, it can be used for evil. Charisma is, and it's within anybody.
Yeah.
If you have the tools to understand how to connect that mind and heart and to magnetize.
Exactly. You raise underneath what you just said a very interesting point. The head part of the formula relates to message. Message ultimately stems from what your inner truth values are. Now, are your inner truth values is who and what you stand for in this world, or is what your goal is on this planet something that is worth carrying out into the world? Or is it something that is deeper and more either spiritual or more helpful in terms of its bent towards others? Well, then that ultimately plays into what your message is and how your charisma will manifest itself and what sort of opportunities will or will not come your way. But knowing and understanding those inner truth values, ethics are very deeply connected to charisma, particularly if you are on the receiving end of charisma and assessing whether the feeling state that charisma is bringing within you is worth following, because sometimes it's not.
Mm. That's so important too, that you're not just having charisma, like you're not just or uncovering your charisma for the sake of the charisma, but tapping into something deeper. Is this aligned with my values? Is this aligned with where I want to go? Is this aligned with my intention and my path in life?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you are not tapped in that way, or if that tap in is superficial, then you will get things like an absence of charisma, an appearance of charisma that comes off as unbelievably inauthentic and that people tend to respond very negatively to, or you will be stuck in the space that we talked about a little bit earlier, which is of pure entertainment. Neither one of those ultimately magnetize opportunities of the sort that drive humanity or, frankly, personal development forward.
Mm. And this seems to speak so directly to what you do, the work that you do with people. Is this piece of uncovering charisma, is that the main thing that you do in your work? Or are there other layers to what you do as well?
Thank you so much for asking that. There are many other layers. As deep as the meanings within Greek mythology is as deep as I attempt to take the clients who are willing to walk down that road. I have a signature program that has 4 main components, of which the igniting of charisma is one. The other components are, number 1, looking at the toxic myths as well as the roles that you play within the myths that may be holding you back or keeping you stuck. particularly if you're unhappy with your professional life.
Can you give an example of that?
Absolutely. So let's step back a little bit. I've spent a lifetime reading about myths and studying myths. They're fascinating. And while there is no generally accepted categorization of myths that everyone says, okay, these are the types of myths that there are, for the purposes of the program that I have, there are 5 types of myths that are toxic, that people commonly fall into that hold them back. They are as follows. Number 1, the tragic origin myth. My life stinks because of my circumstances of origin. Number 2, the ritual myth. These are situations in which the stories that you're telling yourself exist solely and only to justify self-limiting or self-destructive behaviors. Number 3, the social myth. You're living a social myth when your life and your professional situation is being driven by the expectations of other people, society, your mother, whoever. Number 4, the doomsday myth. That is a myth that you're living when you think that everything that you're working on is inevitably going to lead to some sort of dramatic, catastrophic end. And then number 5, the underworld myth. I was living this one particularly starkly, in which you are living a life with complete spiritual, mental, or emotional darkness and no hope of ever escaping. So I help people identify whether they are living out one of those 5 toxic myth types. And then sometimes if you are even living out a myth that's neutral, you may be playing a role in your myth, which is negative. You might be playing a monster, a victim, a fool, a bystander. And if you're playing one of those roles, then I work with the client to be able to identify how those could be impacting their professional and their personal trajectories. Once we get through that plank of the program, we shut the book on those old myths, and then we take a visit to the oracle. Now, for those who don't know, the oracle was an ancient Greek prophet who uttered words that were mysterious. And her words always came true. We each have an oracle inside, whose words may have been scrambled by the events of our lives and the passage of time, but it always is honest. So I work with people to visit their inner oracle, to be able to uncover their hidden strengths, their values that they may have forgotten, their purpose in life, and then begin to build a vision for where they want their life to go. Once you have that vision, then you have that message that allows us to move into the place where we work on developing charisma. I want everyone that I work with to become a charismatic Olympian. And from there, then we put together a work plan which takes them on the final leg of the Odyssey to find true professional freedom.
Ooh, I'm speechless. What a journey.
Hey.
What a journey to go from that place of being mired in a toxic myth or being mired in some kind of an archetypal role. Is that the right word for it? What you're describing?
That's an absolutely fair approximation. Totally.
So being mired in either that toxic myth or that archetypal role, to being able to shift out of that, to tap into your own inner oracle.
Yes.
Uncover and unleash your own charisma. Really, I get this picture of almost just opening up, lighting on fire, and being able to be a part of the world. And then to take that out into your professional life, your business life, your entire life, so that you can live something that feels magnificent.
You just did something very beautiful. And that is, you connected your heart. You connected your feelings about what you heard with the message that you were attempting to convey to your audience. And then I saw it expressed through an entire range of body motions, as well as facial expressions and vocal tonations that pushed that enthusiasm and that feeling out in a way that was singular to your own unique individual mode of expression. You demonstrated as an introvert exactly how charisma is manifested.
Woohoo!
You go, girl.
Oh, I feel like I can get an A+ for today.
You just climbed to the top of Mount Olympus.
Oh, even better. Even better. What an incredible gift. What an incredible gift. Who are the ideal people that come to you to embark on this journey with you? Are they people who find themselves in that hollow place, don't know where life is going, feel like they're disconnected with themselves? Are those the people you work with?
Yes, that is one significant profile. They usually are organizational leaders, maybe C-suite executives or emerging organizational leaders in whatever sector. They may be successful entrepreneurs or solopreneurs that are feeling that way as well. If they come from large organizations, they may actually be people that, accompanying that sense of aimlessness or lack of purpose, are looking to possibly explore entrepreneurialism, but they don't know how. Well, I can help them with that. But there are two other general groups that can benefit from this. First of all, any organizational leader or solopreneur / entrepreneur that's looking to up-level leadership, because leadership is ultimately held back if you are living out these same toxic myths, if you don't know or are not connected to your inner core, if you can't communicate charismatically, if you have no plan for getting where you want your leadership skills to take you. So anyone looking to up-level their leadership skills is perfect for the program that I just described. Now, there is a sort of sub-program that is for anyone, again, usually entrepreneurs, artists, perhaps, or organizational leaders who aren't really caught in toxic myths, so to speak, but they want to become charismatic superstars because they know that their communication skills are simply too weak. They may know that they're kind of boring, or they may be too reserved to really bring out their inner charisma, or they may be people that have competent executive presence, but don't really understand how to take it into the realm of the divine. And so those people are also potential beneficiaries of my program. It's not really a basic communication or public presentation or executive presence sort of program, as much as a how can I make you have a thunderbolt in your hand and shake the room when you walk in.
What a valuable skill to have.
Hey.
So you're not just helping people who are feeling that disconnect and having that painful or that numbing experience, but also people who are already in leadership roles, but want to be able to grab that thunderbolt and know that they can command a room with charisma.
Let's face it, if you are a leader, or even more pointedly, if you're an entrepreneur, you may go to a networking meeting over and over and over. And we all, if you're an entrepreneur or a business person, you are in sales, you know what that's like. People go around in a round robin, they give their 30-second commercial, they go and they talk to each other afterwards, they exchange business cards or Zoom information and or LinkedIn, and they forget everyone that they met, what they stand for, who they are, what services they provide. Not if you walk into the room with charisma. If you walk into that room with charisma, people pay attention. And I know that for a fact, because since working on this, I know how to walk into a room and electrify it. People do not forget when Scott Mason has been in a networking meeting. And I want that for every last one of my clients. They all deserve it.
That's incredible. And what you're describing is not, look at me, look how cool I am, everybody pay attention to me. What you're describing is opening your heart, allowing your energy to shine so that people remember you in a way because you feel so good to be around.
Absolutely. Magnetizing the opportunity is exactly what you're describing. The whole, there is a very humorous story that I heard once about a very, very famous R&B singer who got a Lifetime Achievement Award. And on the stage, this R&B singer entered the room down a staircase, and she had flowing gowns with glitter, flowing 20 feet behind her, and she had on a tiara and was dripping in diamonds. And they gave her the award, and she stood at the mic and said, "Me? Me? Little old me?" That's this sort of like, just look at me sort of showboating. It's the ultimate humble brag, but it's still bragging and being a total diva. You are right. No one connects to divas. If they did back in olden times, those days are over. In the modern world, particularly where everyone has been pushed into a corner where prepackaged celebrities and movies and all this other stuff is down our throats at all times, authenticity is what ultimately will bring you opportunity, not super polished crap.
Amazing. I'm a public speaking coach, and I teach a lot of those skills, those skills of how to structure something, how to structure a talk, how to step into a network meeting and have the skills to know what to say. What you're talking about, I think, is counterpoint to those, and sometimes much more valuable, is to be able to come in with charisma, with that thunderbolt in your hand. When you can do that, it doesn't really matter what you say. It matters to some extent, but it matters less. And you, as long as you are speaking authentically, you're going to make an impact on people.
I agree. And one of the things I like about your description about what you do is that it underscores really the difference between the sort of work that we do. I'm not someone who really would be that good at working with people on basic public presentation skills. That's not what I'm about. Or even some, basic executive presence skills. Those are areas that I view as foundational, profoundly important, and best left to those like you who know what you're doing with regards to that. What we're talking about then is putting together an entire package of ways that people can think about leadership, growth, and transformation. And I love being able to explore all of these things from different angles, because there's so many people out there that have so many needs, not all of which are exactly the same.
Exactly. And what a gift you give people. What an absolute gift with your presence and with your program, your coaching, but who you are and what you bring in the way that you have gone from being in this place of feeling so hollow, of feeling soulless, and shifting into where you are now, of a person who does exude charisma. You practice what you preach. You're so connected to yourself and authentic, and that you show people the way to do that.
There's nothing more beautiful than being able to be in that position. Sometimes I will be sitting around my apartment, living room, or in my home studio, and it'll float into my head, I love my life. And after so many decades of despising it, I appreciate that. Having gone through the journey of being without, and then being able to find and tap what is within, I can't help but feel joyful, nor can I help but want to pass the message on.
Wow. Wow. What a gift to have you here today.
It's been a gift talking to you, actually. You bring it. You really do. That's just being real.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And as we're wrapping up here, Scott, if there's one thing that you want a listener to take away from our conversation today, what would it be?
The most charismatic person to have ever lived, according to the ancient Greeks, was a hero by the name of Orpheus. Orpheus got his charisma when his wife died, and he went to the underworld to convince the god of the dead to release her back to earth. The god of the dead told Orpheus she can come back so long as you don't look at her until you arrive back into the land of the living. And so Orpheus marched through this long tunnel from the underworld back up to our world. And just as the first beams of the sun struck his face, he had doubt that the charisma that he had used to persuade the Lord of the Dead to give his wife back had really worked. And so Orpheus, in a moment of weakness, turned around and he looked at his wife, only to see that she'd been there all along, and only long enough to see her disappear forever. The one thing I would tell people who are listening to this is learn from that story a profound lesson, which is once you've ignited your charisma, do not ever doubt its power. Do not ever look back.
Oh, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. The power of stories for healing.
Yes.
Oh, it's such a powerful thing. And speaking in public speaking, I believe that's the power of healing that public speaking can have, is the power of stories. And you are using the power of story from Greek mythology in your coaching to help people heal on a profound level and come into their power.
Well, stories have been healing people for eons. I want them to keep healing folks.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you, Scott. And I want to make sure that if you're listening, you can find Scott if you'd like to book a call with him. Scott, what's the best way for people to connect with you or to reach out to you?
First of all, you can always follow me on LinkedIn. I am S. Scott Mason. Every day, or almost every day, I break down some portion of a Greek myth and explain its direct relevance to your professional life, particularly the ongoing quest for professional freedom and igniting charisma. I do the same thing on Instagram at s.scott_Mason, s.scott_Mason. If you would like to reach out directly to me and have a conversation about how your own charisma could be ignited a little bit, I do those sort of free, no pressure, no sales consultations. If the person tells me that they have heard about this opportunity through your podcast, so I can give you the credit that you deserve. And you reach out to me that way at scott@myfreedomrocks.com. scott@myfreedomrocks.com.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And we'll make sure to put that in the show notes so that if you're listening and you know you want to reach out to Scott, you'll be able to do that easily. Thank you again for being here and all the value that you've shared today. It's so appreciated.
Thank you for the opportunity. This is a first-rate podcast, and I am proud to have been a part of it.